This woman sued a country. Ireland told her another pregnancy would kill her. Then the government seized the contraceptives that could save her life. So she sued the entire nation, and won. In 1960s Ireland, the Catholic Church didn't just influence government. It was the government. Divorce was illegal. Abortion was illegal. And since 1935, even contraception had been banned. You couldn't sell it. You couldn't prescribe it. You couldn't import it. Breaking this law could mean prison. For most people, this was simply how Ireland worked. Church and state, intertwined. Morality written into criminal code. But for a young woman named Mary May McGee, these weren't abstract moral questions. They were a death sentence. May was in her early 20s when her first pregnancy nearly killed her. What should have been joyous turned into a medical nightmare. She developed severe pre-eclampsia, a condition where blood pressure spikes dangerously, organs begin failing, and strokes become likely. She survived. Her baby survived. But doctors delivered a terrifying warning. Another pregnancy could be fatal. Most women would expect that warning to come with solutions, medical advice, options. But this was Ireland in the 1960s. There were no options. Within months, May was pregnant again. Then again. Then again. Between December 1968 and November 1970, just 23 months, May McGee endured 4 pregnancies. 4 babies, Martin, Gerard, and twins Sharon and Sylvia. Her body was under siege. During her second pregnancy, she suffered a stroke and temporary paralysis. Doctors feared she wouldn't survive. During her third pregnancy, it got worse. May collapsed and fell into a coma that lasted 4 days. Her family gathered around her hospital bed in Skerries, preparing to say goodbye. She woke up. Barely. And doctors were blunt. Another pregnancy will kill you. This wasn't speculation. It was medical certainty. May McGee was 27 years old, a mother of 4 small children. Her husband, Shay, was a fisherman with a modest income. They lived in a cramped mobile home, and Irish law offered her exactly 2 choices: risk death, or become a criminal. Under the 1935 Criminal Law Amendment Act, contraception was banned across Ireland, not just sale, but importation. The law was designed to align Ireland's criminal code with Catholic moral teaching. For decades, it went unchallenged. Even doctors couldn't legally prescribe contraceptives, even when pregnancy posed a direct documented threat to a patient's life. May's doctor, James Loughran, faced an impossible ethical dilemma. His medical oath demanded he protect his patient. Irish law demanded he do nothing. He chose his patient. He quietly prescribed a diaphragm and spermicidal jelly, one of the few contraceptive methods available at the time. But there was a problem. These products weren't manufactured in Ireland. They had to be imported from England. So May and Shay ordered them, and Ireland's government was waiting. When the package arrived at Irish customs, officials seized it. The contraceptives were confiscated. Shortly after, the McGees received an official letter. Attempting to import contraception again could result in prosecution and imprisonment. Read that again. The Irish government was telling a 27-year-old mother, whose doctors had warned that pregnancy could kill her, that preventing that pregnancy was a crime. She could die legally, or live as a criminal. May McGee was furious. "I was furious that the government could tell us how to live our lives," she later recalled. That fury turned into something else: resolve. With support from the Irish Family Planning Association, May and Shay made an extraordinary decision. They would sue their own country. The case, McGee versus Attorney General, argued that Ireland's contraception ban violated fundamental constitutional rights, specifically the right to marital privacy. The idea that married couples could make private decisions about family planning without state interference was radical in 1970s Ireland. In 1971, the case reached the High Court. The ruling was devastating. The judge upheld the ban. Contraception remained illegal. Most people would have stopped there. May and Shea appealed to the Supreme Court. Now the entire nation was watching. At the heart of the case was a question Ireland had avoided for decades. Did the government have the right to deny a woman access to contraception, even when pregnancy could kill her? Government lawyers argued the law reflected Ireland's Catholic values. The courts shouldn't interfere. May's legal team argued the Irish Constitution protected marital privacy and autonomy. And during the proceedings, Shea McGee was asked a question that cut through all the legal theory. As a devout Catholic, how did he feel about his wife using contraception? The courtroom went silent. Shea spoke quietly but clearly. "I'd prefer to see her using contraceptives than be placing flowers on her grave." The room stayed silent. In that moment, the case stopped being about law and became about something human and undeniable. A husband who didn't want to bury his wife. On December 19, 1973, the Irish Supreme Court delivered its verdict. By a vote of 4-1, the judges ruled in favor of the McGees. They declared that the Irish Constitution protected a right to marital privacy, and that right included access to contraception. The 1935 ban was struck down as unconstitutional. Legal scholars would later call it the legal equivalent of the moon landing. A Supreme Court justice said it was the court's single most important decision in terms of political and social consequences in its nearly 100-year history. It started, he said, a social revolution, the consequences of which are still being played out. For the first time, Ireland's courts recognized that personal decisions within marriage were protected from state control. It was a seismic shift, but victory didn't mean acceptance. The week after the Supreme Court decision, May and Shea attended Mass at their local church in Skerries. During the service, the priest addressed the congregation. From the altar, he condemned the McGees by name. They sat for a moment in stunned silence. Then they stood up and walked out. They never returned to that church. The moment captured the personal cost of challenging not just law, but the cultural authority that shaped Irish life. Despite the Supreme Court ruling, politicians hesitated. Ireland in the 1970s remained deeply conservative. Lawmakers feared backlash from the church and voters. So, reform crawled. It wasn't until 1979, 6 years later, that limited legislation allowed married couples to obtain contraception through a doctor's prescription. Minister for Health Charles Haughey called it an Irish solution to an Irish problem. Even then, access was severely restricted. Unmarried adults couldn't legally buy condoms until 1985. A prescription for emergency contraception was required until 2017. Full liberalization took until the 1990s, 20 years after the McGee ruling. But the legal foundation had been laid by a housewife and a fisherman who refused to accept the law. May and Shea went back to their quiet life in Skerries. They had 2 more children, Darren and Andrea. In 1981, Shea had a vasectomy. May never sought celebrity. No book tours. No political campaigns. She returned to raising her 6 children. For years, even her own children didn't fully realize the pivotal role their parents had played in Irish history. But the impact of her case continued to grow. The constitutional right to privacy recognized in McGee versus Attorney General would influence future legal challenges involving reproductive rights, marriage equality, and LGBTQ+ protections. In 2023, May received the Trinity Preces Elite Award from Trinity College Dublin Law Society, an award founded by former President Mary Robinson, recognizing her immense contribution to Irish law and society. In September 2025, a sculpture was unveiled in Floraville Park in Skerries, honoring her legacy. May attended the ceremony. Weeks later, on October 28, 2025, Mary May McGee died peacefully at Beaumont Hospital in Dublin, surrounded by her family. She was 81 years old. Her husband Shay had died in January 2024. By the time May died, Ireland had transformed. Contraception was widely available. Marriage equality was law. Abortion had been legalized. Few young Irish people knew the full story of how those freedoms began. But they traced directly back to a young mother in the 1960s who was told something impossible, that staying alive might make her a criminal. She refused to accept it. She refused to die quietly to satisfy a law. Instead, she challenged the government, the church, and a legal system that had never been questioned. And she won. Sometimes revolutions are loud, protests filling streets, headlines screaming change. But sometimes they begin in a hospital room with a doctor delivering a terrifying warning, and a woman deciding that the law doesn't get to decide whether she lives or dies. May McGee didn't set out to become a symbol. She just wanted something simple: the right to live. And that was powerful enough to change an entire country.